Okay, how is everybody? Great. That was a wonderful song, wasn't it? I'm not happy that woman over there, Jenny F, didn't get any points. I've just got rid of my six that I've had for 4 years. Talk about the handwriting that's written against us. I was coming back from a conference in Manchester, and Claire was with me at the time, and as we flew up the M1, suddenly comes after us, pulls us over in this under this bridge, and the guy said, would you mind stepping out of your car, please? Anyway, I said to him, I'm on my way to church, as though somehow that was going to make a difference. He says, well, look, he says, here's the point. He says, you either pay it now. I was doing 97. And that's not an exaggeration. That is the truth. I was doing 97. But we're in the Volvo. You didn't feel it. It was like 35, wasn't it, Claire, really? Pretty much, it was like, And it was, they said it was 97. So pay it now, pay the 60 quid fine, and have 6 points and be done with it. So I went, all right. But I didn't go to any course or anything. But I'll tell you what, Connie will tell you, I drive like an old biddy now. Because there's something about getting caught that somehow makes you go slow. See, I'm thinking, well, I've already got 6 points. I can only have 10. And if I have 10, then they'll take away my license. So I've got to really be careful. So you start doing things really careful. I might, now they've gone, because I got a letter just the other week saying that my license was clear. I might speed up again now. Sorry. It's fun, isn't it? Anyway, let's get on with it straight away. I really felt that God spoke to me at 5:30 this morning, and he said a word. Well, he actually said it on Thursday when I was with Jenny. And somehow it just came up, didn't it? Jabez, this name. And this morning, I couldn't get it off my mind, couldn't think of anything else. I said, right, Lord, if that's what you want to talk about, then that's what we'll talk about. And some of you in here tonight, especially you young people, you'll probably find this interesting, and I'll try and keep it as interesting as possible for you. If you want to look, first of all, Ezekiel chapter 18, verse 2. This is a cracking scripture, and I'm going to base what I say tonight on this. You'll like this. It's not one that you learn in Sunday school and recite. Look at this. Is it there? There. The fathers eat sour grapes and the children's teeth are set on edge. Ooh, that's a bit of a hard word, isn't it? What it's really getting at is there are things that happen in families with parents, and they've got a sour grape experience of life. And although the children are not eating those sour grapes, because that's what the parents are doing, ultimately the children feel the sourness of it all. Now, we've been talking over the last few weeks about being shackled to our past. I spoke a few weeks ago about sore points in our lives, things that have happened that create belief systems that we then struggle to, get rid of, and we don't really understand how in the subconscious they're actually dictating every step that we take. We think, oh, we're free, but actually there's something that is saying this is the way to go, and we haven't even a clue that that's happening. Isn't that sad? So anyway, that's my little scripture that if any of you young people learn it, I might give you a prize. What should the prize be? A bunch of grapes? I don't know. Something like that. Or some sours or something. So whether we like it or not, we understand that children are affected. So, the little story I want to tell you tonight, let's look at 1 Chronicles 4 verse 10. And you can put it in either the Message or the New King James. I don't really mind, because I just want you to put it there so you have a look at it. This little story is literally 2 verses long, and some of you have heard it before. Some of you, it will be like news. Yeah, that's brilliant, isn't it, when we hear something for the first time? But it's a little story, like I say, 2 verses long, that is in the middle of a really boring genealogy. It's name after name. You know, so-and-so begot so-and-so, and so-and-so begot so-and-so, and they had 2 kids, and they had some more kids, and they did this, and they did that. But all of a sudden, there's this wonderful little break in the monotony. It's gorgeous. And listen to what it says. Which is this? Is there a verse before that? Can you go 1 verse before? Or not? No? Because what I've got here is different. Well, anyway, according to what I've got here, Jabez was a better man than his brothers, a man of honor, and his mother named him Jabez, saying, "Oh, the pain." Basically, pain in the neck. Not, oh, the pain really of the childbirth, because you expect that with having babies. But it was, oh, the pain, saying, "A painful birth, I bore him in great pain." And then the next verse, Jabez prayed to God of Israel, "Bless me, oh, bless me. Give me land, large tracts of land, and provide your personal protection. Don't let evil hurt me." And this wonderful few words, God gave him what he asked. Who would like that to be their story tonight? I think that's amazing. I love it. Okay, so we've got this thing. Can I just break it down for a few minutes? Because you'll find it quite interesting. So, Jabez's name meant sorrow. His name told a story. Now, that actual meaning of that word sorrow is only 3 times in the Old Testament, so it's a very specific word. It's in Psalm 139, and if you want to look it up, you can do. And it's actually this, and you might think, heck, that's a bit weird. It says, David was saying, "See if there is any wicked way in me." And the word wicked is the same word as this sorrow. Ooh, bit off, innit? And then the other time it's mentioned is in Isaiah 14, verse 3, when it says, "And it shall come to pass in the day that the Lord shall give thee rest from thy sorrow." So it was a particular break from a period of feeling as opposed to just one feeling of an event. It was actually a long-term feeling. He was going to give rest from this sorrow that has something to do with wickedness. So let me put it into my words, that his name meant that there was a wickedness connected with some sort of event that led to pain and guilt as a consequence of the experience. And that was all in his name. Would you like to carry that name around with you? I think it's pretty awful. I mean, my name, Christine, means child of God. It means, Christian, Christ follower or whatever. It's quite nice, that, really. Not that I particularly can say that I live up to the name, but it's quite a nice name. I'm glad I'm not called wickedness connected with an experience leading to pain and guilt as a consequence. Ooh. Anyway, let's move on. So it makes you wonder about the story of Jabez's mum. Can you suddenly get with her? Can you feel a little bit of compassion to this woman who's possibly having a child in a very difficult situation? Maybe his dad wasn't around. Maybe she's struggling to make ends meet. She's trying to get food, but it's a man's world, and she's a woman, and she realizes this baby's going to come along, and there's nobody to support her. Oh, the pain. Yeah? Now you say, oh, well, I've not been there, so I don't relate to any of that. I think we can. We can find a story that in our lives that's sort of similar to that, but this is her story. So maybe he was an illegitimate child. Maybe it's that he was conceived in a wonderful, moment of passion. But then it had all gone wrong. And she was suddenly alone. And she's thinking, I can't do this. by myself. And finally she gives birth, and all we've got is this awful story of pain. But this is where this story comes in, and I absolutely love it, because Jabez makes this prayer. Now, I haven't a clue how old he was, because when you think about it, it just says, and Jabez prayed. How old was he? I don't know. He might have been a little boy. It might have been a teenager. It might have been when he was grown up. But the point is this, that something had triggered in his heart that there was more to life than what he had been shown or what he'd been named. And he prayed this prayer. Now, there's three things sort of in this prayer that reinforce that his situation was very bad, because it's this. He says, enlarge my space. Give me something. Where is it? Up there. Give me land. In the other version, it says, enlarge my territory. Give me land. Now, in those days, you didn't get land unless you inherited it from your dad. So it proves then that a dad wasn't around, okay? Then he asked for protection. And you see, this is another point about how we lived in those days. Children of that kind had no claims for any protection under the law. They were very much kids that were just pushed around. They got what they could, but they had no real security. And the last one, when he says, keep me from evil that I may not grieve. See, the word for evil there is ra. Ra. R-A, ra. And it's a word for bad experiences, and grieve is a word for pain. And he's basically saying, keep me from carrying the guilt of my mother's experience or doing something similar because of the pain that I bear in my name and my experience. He's saying, I don't want this to be repeated in my life. I want something different. In just 2 little verses, isn't he saying a lot? And it says, God granted his request. I think that's awesome. Anybody up for God granting a request like that tonight? Well, I'm glad you're excited. Nose white. Okay. We have to say, why did God grant this request then? To me, who's prayed and you've said, God, give me so-and-so, and it hasn't happened? Oh, I think we've all done that and felt we haven't had an answer. But here, we have proof that God grants a request. Now, what I want to look at, it says in verse 9 that Jabez was more honorable, or in the Message it says he was better than his other brothers. Now, if he was more honorable than his brothers, does not that mean that his brothers were honorable? It's not saying his brothers were wicked and Jabez was a good guy. He's saying he was just more honorable. So we're not talking about there being a great divide between him and his brothers. It just says he was more honorable. Now, I wonder what that actually means. What does it look like? And do you know, I find it really interesting that in all of us, we have pictures of what things mean. So if I say a word, you say, oh, I know what that looks like. That's what it means to me. And to all of us in here tonight, it will be something very different. What does honorable mean? Does it mean being brave? Does it mean being courageous? Does it mean honest, being humble? Does it mean telling the truth? Well, you know, what does it actually mean? Now, you see, if we're not careful, we can conclude that God answered his prayer because he was honorable. And I'm not sure that that's the truth. Because if we're not careful, that suggests then that there are conditions, that if we fulfill the conditions, God answers our prayers. So we have to say, okay, the message of the church then is for everybody to be honorable. Oh, but what does that look like? Oh, what happens if my definition is different than yours? Then God isn't going to answer my prayer, but he might answer yours. It gets very messy, doesn't it? So we have to say that God didn't answer this prayer of Jabez because of this honorableness, because otherwise it would have been a condition he would have answered his prayer based on a condition upon certain characteristics, right? So it wasn't a condition required by God, but this is what I like, and this came to me. It was a condition of heart that allowed stuff to get through from God to him. Now that's very different. Do you see the difference? It wasn't a condition that said, do this and I will do this, but it was a condition of his own heart that made a way for stuff to get through. Oh, I like that. That means all of us can have this condition of heart, being honourable. Now, I always worry when we have definitions of words, because I know how everybody thinks differently. But you see, there's a scripture in James that say this. It says, the prayer of a person living right with God is something powerful to be reckoned with. And if you've read it in the King James Version, it says, the fervent, effectual prayer of a righteous man. See, you know the King James Version, don't you? So basically, we could say there again, this is a condition, that if you are a righteous man and you pray, then your prayers will be answered. But then we would have to say, but what does it mean to be a righteous man? Oh, doesn't it get confusing? So we have to say there is something more to this than meets the eye. So the next verse gives us a clue to the fact in this James 5 verse 6 where it says, the prayer of a righteous man avails much. Because in the next verse, it gives us a clue to the fact that a person, quote, living right with God does not mean a perfect man, because it says this. Elijah, for instance, human just like us, prayed hard that it wouldn't rain, and it didn't, not a drop, for 3.5 years. He got his prayer answered, but it says there, Elijah, for instance, just like... Oh, so it said in one sentence, the prayer of a righteous man gets answers. And then he says, but Elijah, for instance, got his prayer answer. But guess what? He was just like us. Oh, isn't this? Oh, I get excited because I know what's coming. See, this honorableness or right living, it cannot be talking about anybody being a perfect person or about describing people always getting it right, because we know that just isn't possible. So what does it mean to be honourable? This is my slant on it, and you can do what you like. You can go and look it up a bit more. But it's this. Somebody who is honourable, one that communicates freely and honestly with all, no pretense, is not disposed to cheating or deception, isn't fraudulent. Now, I like that last word because I want to shorten it down and say, is not a fraud. Oh, Jabez wasn't a fraud. That's all it means when it says he was honourable. He laid his life out on the table and he shouted to God. He says, God, I'm screwed. My mum's had a horrible life. She's been dumped. She's had a terrible experience. And this is my lot. I've no land. I've no protection. I'm in a terrible place. He says, but you. That's being honourable. And some of us, we're asking God for things, and the thing that's missing from our lives is our honour. Our honourability, if that's the word. Is it? I can say that. Honourability. Because we won't come clean. We want to cover up. Oh, well, I'm not. It's a bit like Jenny saying about people who are saying that their speeding wasn't as bad as somebody else's speeding. When it's just, we failed. So he wasn't a fraud. Now, I feel, and this is where it gets a little bit challenging, and you'll have to forgive me if you feel I'm too heavy at this, but when we talk about being honest and honourable and being open and letting our lives be truthful, I would say in this day and age, it's one thing that we're lacking, because we all want to look so good in the eyes of each other. We want to appear right. And so what do? We say things that are not the truth in order to look better with each other. But that's what's stopping the request that we've brought to God getting through, because we've put our dishonesty in the way. Now, I'm going to give you an example, and some of you won't like this. And like I say, if the cap fits, you'll have to wear it, because I find it really hard to hypotheticalize. I said to somebody the other week, I said, oh, you weren't there last night at a thing that we were doing. And I said, where were you? Oh, I was ill. So I said, oh, I'm sorry to hear that. Now, the problem is whether there were or not is an issue. Because people say, if I say I just didn't want to be there, I don't look very good in your eyes, because I said I would be there because I wanted to appear committed. But then when it came to it, I had other stuff that I wanted to do better. So I just didn't bother. But if I say that, I'm not going to look very good. So what am I going to do? If I say that I'm ill, it'll look better, and people will accept that. Now, I know that's why I said I'm touching little things, but these are the dishonourable things that stop the request being granted. Now you're going to say, yeah, but you're making it into conditions. No, I'm not, because I'll tell you what's happening. The answer is actually being sent, but it can't get in. It's stuck. Because there's a doorway, there's a fortress in the way, and that fortress is this dishonesty that we won't be willing to tear down. Now, does this make sense? Now you say, yeah, but it didn't really matter. It's all about this business of white lies. Oh, who uses that term? Well, it was only a little white one. There is no such thing. An untruth is an untruth. There's not black and there's not white, but isn't it funny how we found a way of making some things less of a problem than others? Oh, how we justify to ourselves this sort of behavior that actually is only to our detriment. We were on the meeting the other night on Wednesdays. We were talking about what love looks like. And it's so interesting because to each one of us, we all have a different view of what love looks like. And somebody came to the front and said this. They said, love is mutual respect and trust. Brilliant answer. But you know what? You can only respect somebody who will tell the truth. And yet most of the time we're longing to love each other, but there's this dishonesty, and it's only little things, and it seems so unimportant, but it gets in the way. Now, the reason why I'm bringing this is because Jabez didn't do that. He says, this is it. This is me, warts and all. And if you can't do something with this, then nothing will be done. Is this sort of hitting? I find it really hard when people, let's put it this way. You all have something in here that you just know. Be honest, when things aren't quite right, you know it here. And we try to justify it away, we try to rationalize, we try to, maybe it's this, maybe it's that. But there's something in here that you just know about yourself and equally about others. Now, let me be very clear on this. This is not about trying to go around and judge and say, this is what you're doing. No, it's not about that at all. I'm wanting to open up the way for things to get to you. Is that clear? Because I don't want you to go away and say, oh, Chris is shouting at me, because I get accused of that all the time. I'm not. Except I did shout at some kids in the back for diving on the what do you call it? What do you call it? The bouncy castle. Pitch blackness, I'm in the loo, and suddenly there's this noise, and in pitch blackness there's a load of people on this. I said, get off! I'm guilty. I did. It was me. Anyway, quickly. Psalm 51:17 says this, a broken and contrite heart, O God, you will not despise. Do you know why we think God despises it? Because sadly, if we are broken and contrite with each other, there can be a despising. And yet truth and honesty, calling it what it is, should be what we feel in here and say, yeah, that's okay. So let me just clarify what I said a bit ago. Let's say the person who didn't turn up, who was ill, and that's fine, gets in touch and says, but look, here's the thing. I wasn't really ill. Now, I'm not saying this is the truth. Oh, heck, because you get really in a mess now. But I'm trying to show you how it really should be with us all. It should be, do you know what? I know I should have been there. But what happened, I got working late. I missed my bus or something happened. By the time I got home, I was in such a state. I wasn't in any fit state to get back in the car to come because I was so exhausted that the truth is I just had to stay home. People don't like that sort of honesty. And we should accept it from each other. Because it encourages honesty. It encourages people to be upfront and honest. But if we reject it, they'll say, I used to remember that there was a phrase, honesty is the best policy. Oh, you must be kidding. And some of you, with your kids, be careful. Because you say to them, if you tell the truth, it'll go better with you. Who's ever said that? Be honest. Or who has ever had parents say that to them? Come on, this is your turn over there. Who's ever said, if you tell the truth, it will be better for you. Right. But then, if when the kid tells the truth, it doesn't go better for them, you have just lied. And you tell your children that to deceive is better than telling the truth. And you set them on a journey of deception for the rest of their lives. And some of you don't want to believe that, but it's the truth. You're far better saying, because you told me the truth, thank you, it's going to be okay. Because this is how we're going to operate in our lives. See how much damage is being done because of that sort of dishonesty. Anyway, let's just move on. There's another scripture, Matthew 5:8. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. Pure in heart. It sounds as though we've got to do a lot of jumping through hoops and getting everything right. No, just be honest and open before God. This is why Jabez got his request. He brushed up against the divine. Ooh, I like that. And if you can just keep this in your mind, you have opportunities constantly to brush up with the divine. Now, I'm going to tell you something now, and I am not a scientist, far from it. In fact, I'm thick. When it comes to anything academic, I'm absolutely a nutcase. Give me crafts, give me curtains, give me cooking, give me gardening, all that sort of creative stuff, and I'm your woman. But when it comes to anything academic, I'm pretty rubbish. But I read something this week that nearly blew my socks off, and I'm going to tell you it, not because I've got it really in here yet, but it did something to me. Oh, it did. And if something does something to me, I don't care whether I've really understood it, but I'm going to pass it on. Because he did something for me, and it's in Rob Bell's book, the one that says what we talk about when we talk about God. And I'll take a drink before I read this. Because my eyes we're totally open to what's called subatomic particles. Who's heard of a subatomic particle? Oh, we've got a hand up over there. Or is it for something else? You have? Brilliant. We have one. Anybody else? Well, in that case then, why aren't you up here telling everybody? This blew my socks off because I'll tell you why. As I put it in connection with the story of Jabez, it helped me understand a little bit more why he got his miracle. Why he got his miracle. Let me read some of it that's said. In the subatomic world, things come and go, disappear and appear, spin and leap and communicate and demonstrate awareness of each other, all without appearing to pay any attention to how the world is supposed to work. Now that sounds like a whole load of jargon, but it'll all become clear in a few minutes. At a subatomic level, we discover that the chair that you're sitting on, like everything else in the universe, is made up of atoms. And atoms, it turns out, are 99.9% empty space. Oh. Now, how can that be possible? Because you're sat on a chair. So how can it be empty space? We'll get there in a minute. If all of the empty space was taken out of all the atoms in the universe would fit into a sugar cube. Are you liking this? An atom in the end is a thing. But a thing that is made up mostly of empty space is commonly known as not a thing. So what exactly are you sitting on? Ooh. Your chair appears solid, but the solidity is bit of an illusion. What appears to be solid at the core is actually endless frenetic movements of energy. Ooh. Can you see why it blew me socks off? Because I'm not really here. I'm actually a mirage. I'm just an illusion to you because I'm made up of little balls that are moving around. We'll get a bit more in a minute. Listen to this. Which brings us to us, me and you. You're right there in the middle of it all. You are fascinating. The Bible says we're fearfully and wonderfully made, and we just think flesh, blood, bone, skin. Oh no, it's much more exciting than that. Woo! Listen to this. You lose 50 to 150 strands of hair a day. Heck, it's not very good for people with little hair, is it? You shed 10 billion flakes of skin a day. Every 28 days you get completely new skin, and every 9 years your entire body is renewed. And yet your body, in the midst of this relentless shedding and dying and changing and renewing, continues to remember to be you, strand by strand, atom by atom, flake by flake, millions of cells drifting through the universe, assembled and configured and finely tuned at this second to be you. Am I reading it well? You getting it? I'm not a good reader either. But inevitably, moving on in the next seconds to be other things and other people. Did you hear me? How can I be you and you be me? Ooh, so now it's getting a bit scary, isn't it? Listen to this. The atoms that make you you in this very second may have earlier been part of a stork or a cat. Those of you cat lovers in here, it can be a cat. Or Mars, or a mushroom, a squid, a coconut. He says here, or Ohio. Why would we want to be Ohio? Or Buddha, or Cher. Anybody want to be Cher? I'll have a body. When you listen to this, oh, this blows my mind. Because what it's really saying is that everything is all connected and is part of everything else. But you see, we think, oh, well, that's just this. No, God is part of all that too. So when I hug Claire, she might not like this idea, but some of me is left on her, and some of her is left on me. Ooh. And then sometimes it jumps and moves somewhere else without anybody knowing what's going on. I know you think, well, heck, this is not very churchy stuff. I find this fascinating because what it does is bring me a clearer understanding of how miracles can happen. Do you get it? Why a miracle can happen? Because you see, Jabez, who opens up himself as all these millions of atoms that are really like a load of little balls, opens himself up to God, and God comes down and puts his arms round him, and he goes, and then suddenly, all that Jabez was wanting to get rid of can be lost because it ends up, is this on the divine? And he's left with what the divine is. I find that just utterly astounding. That's how he got his miracle. And we don't get miracles because we're too earthy. We're too stuck in who we are. You know, I'm a woman, you're a man, and we do this, we do that, when actually the truth is we're all connected in just this big mass of incredible divine energy that God is saying, I'm in it all. All of it, every single bit. There's not one bit that God isn't a part of. And yet we're separating, oh, well, God's not in that, God's in this, but God's not in that, but he's in this. No, he's in it all. Which makes it so that any minute I can connect with that divine. It's hard to believe that when I touch somebody, it was really, really very interesting this. I watched a couple of weeks ago, and I hadn't read this at that time, but I watched ER, and there was a guy on ER. It was a bit of a hippie, and he was in the waiting room, and he goes and hugs this guy. And would you believe he actually talked about exchanging subatomic particles? And at the time, I'm thinking, I don't have a clue what he's talking about. I do now. I get it now. Anyway, here's the thing. Let's move on. God himself wants to brush up against you, and he wants to change who you are, what you are, and your story. Oh, I mean, we've said it in other times before, but listen to this. Romans 8:11, it stands to reason, doesn't it, that if the alive and present God who raised Jesus from the dead moves into your life, he'll do the same thing in you that he did in Jesus, bringing you alive to himself. When God lives and breathes in you, and he does, as surely as he did in Jesus, you are delivered from that dead life. With his spirit living in you, your body will be as alive as Christ. So, question, who wants to brush up with the divine? It's easy to say yes, but you've got to have a willingness to say it is as big as what I'm telling you. Because if we think, no, God's out there, and I'm here, and I've got to do the right thing to get him to even notice that I exist, you're wrong, because he's right. He's in the chair next to you. How fantastic is that? Who wants to pray the prayer of Jabez? Who wants to say, yeah, that's my 2 verses of my life. The first verse is the negative. The second verse is the positive, and I want that to be my story. He says, give me an inheritance. Protect me in an alien environment. Don't let the course of my life be dictated by the experiences and the guilt of others, or by history repeating itself by my own choices. He says, let me have a divine encounter. Who wants a divine encounter. If you do, all I want you to do is stand. And I want you in your own mind to say, give me an inheritance. Let me just go back on the page. Protect me. Sorry, shouldn't have turned it over. Protect me in an alien environment. Don't let the course of my life be dictated by the experiences and guilt of others or by history repeating itself by my own choices. Let me brush up against the divine. Anybody want it? It's here. Do you know what we ought to do? We ought to stand up and go. Do you know that's what I see? That's what's in my head. It's everything now. It's just, well, it's like it's not here, but it is. Do you know what I mean? It's brilliant. It's all wobbly. That chair is not solid. Did you know that? Or is it Connor who put his hand up? Did you say that you knew all about these subatomic particles? Well, then why didn't you tell me? I'm mad. Because it's brilliant, isn't it? The truth is, we live in a most incredible world that God has given us. And it's not that we're these little people who have got to just struggle through. He's saying, no, I'll make you, and the very essence of you will be the same as me. So when I come up against you, there's not going to be this issue that we won't be compatible. Isn't that awesome? So, if you want any of this, I want you to stand and we're going to just pray this prayer together. I'm not making you. This is not about, like I said at the beginning, oh, well, I want to look good. If you're not interested, that's fine. Is this okay? Be honest. If you're not interested, be honest. But what we're actually looking at, and Jenny said it the other week about fake data. And I'm going to say data, not data. Fake data. Okay. We are so locked in to this negative belief that's taken us this way, when actually the miracle that's wanting to connect with you is just there all of the time. I want you just to think for a moment what it is that you believe is your negative story, and then say, that is not going to be it anymore. So we have to let go, haven't we? Got to let go of it. So if we don't let go, we just carry on the same old way. We have to say, okay, I'm letting go. This is it. And now we say this, and you can say it with me. Lord, give me an inheritance. Protect me in an alien environment. Don't let the course of my life be dictated by the experiences and guilt of others, or by history repeating itself by my own choices. And say, yes. Yes. Okay. Are you ready for this? I know you think I'm daft, but that's what's in my head. It's like, oh, let's just... Have you ever put your hand on those nails that come up those, and you put your hand in it and they go and they take the shape of your hand? See, that's the thing. Do you know what I'm talking about? You make its mark. And what happens when you push up against the divine? You will not be the same again. Are you ready? I see, I've no pride, have I? I'm not a pride person. I know it sounds as I'm making fun. I want to make it accessible to you. That's all I'm trying to do. Because if we're not careful, these things, I mean, quantum physics for me, it's like way out there. But I have embraced this little bit. And I'm saying, it's mine. I'm having it. And I'm going to have a divine brush up against the divine. Yes? So clap then. Not for me, but for what God has just done in your life, yeah? What he's done in your life. Brilliant. I'm done. Thank you very, very much. Thank you. You're a great bunch of people.